So, I've made it my job to travel, to look for other people that have shared similar experiences. When I made the record of Stan Frederick, I knew that I wanted to introduce a travel component to the series, a sort of conceit to allow the title character access to the wider Slenderverse and investigate paranormal happenings across the country. The thing about that choice is that I was a sheltered city girl. I rarely left my home state of New York my entire life, and when I did, I often did touristy things. I stayed in hotels with my family or just in friends' houses, and I had very little concept of the wider country, both in culture and in geography. That was reflected extremely obviously in the record of Stan Frederick, I think. When any moment did not take place explicitly in New York, we would be told Stan was visiting all sorts of other places. He was in Georgia this time, he's in Connecticut, he's in Wyoming, he's even in New Jersey, and every time these places would physically be shown on camera, it would very clearly be New York. I always filmed it in New York. It was either in the city or it was upstate whenever I wanted there to be more greenery or whatever, but altogether it was always New York. It was my lensing on the world where everything was New York to me because New York was all I knew. And Stan Frederick reflected that pretty aggressively, it turns out. And then I became homeless in early 2024. I started out staying local in New York. I was crashing with friends, and then eventually I started to drift across the East Coast and the Midwest, and finally I could see more than a foot in front of me. That's the worst reason to have that kind of experience and to learn things about yourself, but I did get there. That's how it happened. Redredhat was in part born from that. I had planned on doing versions of that series for a while, even before I didn't live anywhere. I have historically been drawn to media about aimlessness, kinetic, chaotic living, but being literally unhoused, literally in motion, literally drifting. The entire story of Redredhat did change. Redredhat would become a character piece about movement as both escapism and avoidance. And that felt good to do, especially in a reality where the drift was not my choice, where the movement was survival. I was seeing more of the country, and I was experiencing all of these wonderful people, people I've known online for years, and even new friends I've met through these multimedia community pipelines, I guess. And I would have the sense to now accept footage from these friends across the country to all the places I couldn't go. I would have friends, from states that I hadn't even been to yet, sending me footage to use in Redredhat, so as not to have to fake a place as another place, but instead to authentically show a place, even if it was a place I couldn't go to. And after all that, I don't know, as I saw it taking form, I knew what the final thesis of the project would be. I associate my homelessness and my transgender identity practically in tandem at this stage in life. I left my old home 3 weeks after publicly coming out, and separating those two became harder because I was now experiencing public transness literally all the time. I was out, literally, outside. I seldom had opportunities to create safety, and even now, so soon to finding a new place, because I do live somewhere now. I've still got over a year of that momentum, the momentum while trans. It informs so much of me. And so, Redredhat, a homelessness narrative would, of course, be a trans narrative too, about transness as escape from a closeted existence that rolls over not only you, but the people that you love. It's in tandem with that kinetic theme of homelessness. It's about not looking back, but without the prospect of looking forward, until you can manage to let people help you see straight. And this story only works as I've heard it does. I've heard it works. But this story only works because I could see it now. Forward and backward, for better or worse. And yeah, I don't know, I imagine a version of Redredhat that could have existed, like, had I not transitioned. At the very least, where I was trapped at home because I never had an incentive to leave. A version where New York was still masquerading as the whole of the country like it did in San Frederick. I don't know, that version would be such a core betrayal to what the series currently is to me. It'd be the low-budget equivalent of, like, shooting a movie on a green screen stage. The difference is palpable. The character is still herself, but her world isn't anything. Carmen's world would be small in all the wrong ways, while the version I landed on feels, to me, small in all the right ways.